Maybe I should get clear what my view is from the very beginning. I think the proposals that have been put forward are likely to make the depression in which Puerto Rico has been continue. And I've seen policies like this in other countries around the world, and they have almost never worked. In fact, I can't think of a single example where it's worked. So I think it's important to be aware of the serious consequences of the policies that have been proposed for Puerto Rico. As one thinks about this issue, the first priority needs to be a recovery of the growth of the island. It's really that simple. If you could recover growth, then of course it's possible to repay. If you don't recover growth, it's not possible to repay. So any reasonable approach should begin with the question, what is the underlying macroeconomics? How do we restore economic growth? What is the problem now in the short run and then in the medium and long term? And then how does debt restructuring fit into that? So you want to begin with the well-being of the economy and the well-being of the people in Puerto Rico, not where the board began. The board began with, how do I squeeze Puerto Rico to get as much money out of Puerto Rico, forgetting about any consequences to the people? So it was really one priority. It was a clear priority, and that was extracting as much money as one could. It was sort of like debt peonage. The point is, as I look at the board's proposal, it is really putting unambiguous priority one, how much can we squeeze out of the island? And I think that's morally wrong. But not only is it morally wrong, it turns out to be not even in the interest of the creditors. Because by thinking about the creditors too much, they squeeze the island too much, and they won't get as much out. In the situation where countries can't repay, we say the debt is unsustainable, and the country gets involved in a downward spiral. And that's the situation that Puerto Rico is experiencing today. And let me emphasize, the problem is not a lack of willingness to repay, but a lack of capacity. If the economy's GDP has gone way down and it's borrowed excessively, as in the case of Greece or in the case of Puerto Rico, there's absolutely no way you can repay without excess, no way, period. But even the attempt to force it to repay would causes enormous amounts of suffering and typically is counterproductive. So forcing a country to continue servicing the debt in such circumstances only aggravates matters. It turns downturns into recessions and recessions into depressions. Even creditors will lose as the size of the pie to be distributed among everyone is smaller. Greece shows what happens to debt sustainability if you don't think through the consequences carefully. GDP went down by 25%. It's one of the biggest depressions in record. And it was a man-made depression. It wasn't like there was a war or anything like that. It was caused by the IMF, the European Central Bank, and the European Commission with the austerity policies that they imposed on Greece. It was a deliberate policy decision that caused a contraction of 25% in GDP. Well, what has been proposed for Puerto Rico is actually something that is more draconian than Greece. I have never seen a proposal as draconian as the one that has been proposed here.